After filing the paperwork and getting approval to use the device to locate pre-purchased magical spheres, Lucy informed Corey that the process might take a while. Corey spent the afternoon learning from Lewis how to use the gun that Captain Fair gave her. She had a feeling that if Mavis showed up again, she may be forced to use it. Even though guns seemed very ineffective on Mavis, she still wanted to be prepared. Though Captain Fair and Delroy assured her that she did the saving, she still felt that she failed them. Mavis took away her strongest assets just by looking at her, and her body couldn't pick up the slack. If she was better prepared for this role, it could have made a difference. After Corey left the guard headquarters, she sat in her car and tried her best to process the events of the day. Blue elves were a thing. Projection and mind control magic were too. A day as crazy as this can only be helped by one person in her life. She pushed a button on her car's dashboard and a ringing sound followed. A click noise accompanied the final ring to let her know her call had been answered. K to the O to the R to the E, Audra shouted as she answered the call. It was a video call, and Corey could see her friend dancing around as she sung the letters to her name. You're such a dork, Corey said with a sigh. Are you behind the counter at work? What gave it away? The hat? Audra adjusted the hat on her head that read, Real Magic. This coffee isn't going to sell itself, you know. I thought you were off today. I wouldn't have bothered you if I knew you were working, said Corey. Got called in for an early shift right after you left for work. I'm off in about 20 minutes. Want to swing by? I'm on my way. Corey hung up the phone. It didn't take her long to get to Real Magic. The coffee chain that Audra worked for was the biggest one on the western half of Novessa. A haven for the young and old alike, the shops were often packed with people. The one that Audra worked at was no different, but Corey got lucky there was no line when she entered. She walked up and ordered a small iced coffee. Hey, Jess, is Audra still on the clock? She just got off. She should be coming out of the back any moment now, said Jess. As if on cue, Audra popped out of the back through a pair of double doors. She abandoned her Real Magic hat and an apron and had her hair tied up in a bun. Subtract the D from iced and get iced coffee. The name practically writes itself. Yeah, hey, I really need to vent if you have time, said Corey. She paid for her coffee and followed Audra out of the shop. Had the worst day at work today. Audra stopped short and looked at Corey's face. What did this to you? Part of the bad day, Corey responded. Let's talk about it over food. I was going to meet Cindy. She got out early today. Corey continued walking to her car. Audra followed. I don't want to intrude on your date. We could talk back at the house. It's not a date, said Audra. It'll be fine. Just come with me. Why won't you two just make it official already? Make what official? We're not a thing. Audra looked down at her nails while she spoke. We're just two young, beautiful, successful, smart, funny women who both like women. It's not weird at all. Right. Corey opened the driver's side door. I'll drive, then bring you back around for your car after. Audra got in the passenger seat and put her seatbelt on. Corey was staring at her when she was settled in. What? You did the nail thing. Means you're lying about not having feelings for Cindy. Corey smiled as she started the car up. I really need to warn people not to become roommates with a detective. Corey pulled into a parking lot right next to a food establishment known as Pharaoh's Burgers. Despite the name, the place didn't have an Egyptian theme. Audra pulled out her phone as they approached the building. Cindy texted me. She already got us a table. When Corey and Audra got inside, they both looked around until Audra noticed Cindy waving to them. Hey, girls. Cindy smiled, then hugged Audra before hugging Corey. Didn't know you were joining us today, Corey. Yeah, sorry to intrude, said Corey. It's been a long day, and I just needed to vent. Pick two of the best listeners, Audra added with a smile of her own. The three girls sat down. Before we get involved in my issues, how was working at the Barris studio been going? Cindy laughed and shook her head. You know, some days it's great. Other days it's really stressful. Take it you both watched last night's episode? Corey and Audra nodded. I've been told the Welton Company visits the studio pretty often. Last night was my first time actually seeing them, but I assume they've been there at the same time as me before. What are they like? Raisha has visited Nova 1 a few times for public events, but Corey and I usually don't go, said Audra. A waiter interrupted them and took their orders. When he was done, Cindy continued. The gargoyle is what you would expect, the largest human being I've ever seen in person. He's a monster. That being said, I found myself more afraid of Raisha. Audra was playing with her hair, trying to fix it from the Real Magic hat she was wearing earlier. Really? Doesn't everyone love her? She does a lot of stuff for the communities all over the western half of Novessa, said Corey. I'd imagine that would be hard to do if she was that scary. On the Barrett show, I think she acts a bit differently. Off camera and out of the public eye, she's a bit intimidating. Cindy waited for their waiter to put their drinks down on the table and walk off before continuing. Something about the mask she wears, it's creepy. Always thought it was too scary for her to be their public hero, said Audra. She's around people in the public eye all the time, though. Can't be that bad. Gives off a weird aura to me. The thought of the mask made Cindy shiver in her seat. She grabbed her drink and played with the straw in it. There was just something about it that made me feel like the mask was in control and not the other way around. Do you think Mr. Welton can pull off this ether expansion idea? Asked Audra. Could be huge for this planet's development. Corey sighed. I know you both think I'm biased here, but I can't help feel that Mr. Welton is doing this for personal gain. Expansion into new territory and possibly into space is a nice cover-up for filling his own pockets even further, said Cindy. Did you two know that all of those tough questions and reactions Barris does are fake? What, really? Like, rehearsed? Audra spoke with the straw of her drink in her mouth. Not that surprising, said Corey. He's running a show and it would be boring if he didn't ask the tough questions, and I'm sure he doesn't want his guests to feel awkward, so they prepare their answers ahead of time. Cindy shrugged and took a sip of her drink. I guess that does make sense. I apologize for rambling on. You needed to vent, and I'm hogging all of your time. Or all our time. No problem at all. It's me who's sorry for butting in on you and Audra's time together. Corey looked down at her drink for a few moments. There's no easier way to say this. There are elves with blue skin on Novessa. Audra started to choke on her drink, and Corey patted her on the back. Elves? Are you serious? The fantasy elves we read about in those fake Earth books? Cindy tried to clarify. Corey nodded. Yeah, those elves, just with blue skin and yellow eyes. Usually pretty and majestic beings in those books. I'm guessing this one wasn't so friendly, asked Audra. His name was Mavis, and he did this to me. Corey waved her hand over her face to show off the scratches. His magic was unlike anything we had ever seen before. The first victim of his that we found just had lightning wounds. Extremely precise for a human, but not impossible with enough practice, I'd imagine. When we ran into him today, he was using teleportation and mind control. The Walton Company had that teleportation device on the Barris show, Cindy reminded them. This was different. Corey mimicked the device Raisha used with her fingers. There was no device in his hand. Mind control is a new one, added Audra. That's terrifying. Corey nodded. That's not all. When he looked at me with his yellow eyes, it scrambled my thoughts. I couldn't put sentences together, even in my head. That's insane if he could do that to you. Your mind is definitely above average, said Cindy. We got a call, and when we got there, he had already killed 3 officers. If it wasn't for Captain Fair and Guard Officer Delroy, these scratches would have been way worse. Audra put her hand on top of Corey's. I'm sorry you had to go through this. Now that the guard has you, you'll catch him, Cindy said. The waiter brought their food, and they ate mostly in silence. After they were done, Audra spoke. I think you got out earlier than you thought you would. What's your plan for the rest of the day? Cindy was fiddling with a complimentary toothpick the waiter brought them earlier. There's something else I didn't tell you, too. Corey looked at Audra, then back at Cindy. What is it? You know how I travel from Meldgarden to Seva, then take another train home to Fristol, right? Both girls nodded. Well, yesterday on my way home, I ran into a weird man. He was almost as tall as the gargoyle. Audra's hand now grasped Cindy's. Did he hurt you? No, it's nothing like that, said Cindy. He lost all of his memories. He was just standing there confused about everything and staring at Seva. Do you think he knows what happened there? Asked Corey. How did he get there? He didn't remember. I checked his ID and it said his name was Tor. No last name or anything. Then I helped him get home and told him I would help him figure things out. You're just going to help a complete stranger figure out how he lost his memories? Audra stood up and threw away her garbage. What if he's some kind of creep trying to lure you to his home? Well, yeah. Cindy got up and threw her trash away, too. I thought of all that once I got home. I was kind of hoping you two would come with me today. Great. Audra threw her hands up in the air. Now he's going to get 3 girls for the price of 1. Cindy laughed. Calm down, Audra. I know he's big, but I'm pretty sure Corey could still kick his ass. Corey got up and threw her garbage away next. It is interesting. Corey stayed standing and the girls split the bill on the tip. They began to walk out. Haven't had the chance to solve a non-guard related mystery in a while. When they got outside, there was a large group gathered across the street. Numerous guardrails were set up all around Pharaoh's Burgers. There were also 2 guard officer cars on the side closest to Corey, Audra, and Cindy. Hopefully we can get out of the parking lot, said Corey. Audra skipped over to one of the rails. Wonder what's going on. What else would it be? Cindy pulled out her phone. According to Westside, it's Walton Company related. Big shock there. Raisha? Corey began, walking to her car. Audra and Cindy followed. An extremely expensive-looking car flew past the 3 of them before coming to an abrupt stop in front of the crowd. The driver's side door opened upward instead of outward, and a tall man stepped out. His dark auburn hair shuffled in the wind as he fully stretched his arms. The crowd went into a frenzy. Didn't realize it was mostly girls in that crowd, said Cindy. Audra went up on her tippy toes to get a better view. That's Jagger, right? He's like the heartthrob of the Walton Company. I don't get it. Cindy laughed. We're not into guys like that. Of course we don't get it. Corey? Not my type. Corey got into her car and drove it over next to Audra and Cindy. Ready to go? Jagger threw his keys at one of the guard officers as if he was a valet parker, then vanished into the crowd of women waiting for him. Audra and Cindy got in Corey's car. Cindy sat up front with Corey and Audra, and Cindy sat up front with Corey, and Audra sat in the middle of the back seat, so she could lean forward to hear and speak to them. What building was that anyway? Asked Cindy. She had only been to Nova one a few times, and every time was just to eat with Audra. Didn't think it was a very important one, said Audra. It's just a community center to help people further understand technology. With the rate that Novesta is growing and all of the new innovations the Walton Company comes out with each year, it's hard for some of the older residents to keep up. Chance to learn from a Walton Company member is too good to pass up, I guess, said Corey. She handed a small device connected to her dashboard to Cindy. Here, put in the address of that guy you met. Cindy began to type in the address. I'm pretty sure all of those girls lined up outside really need to know how to use technology. Wouldn't be surprised if Jagger's allure is magic too, added Audra. Tor's home, being close to Seva, made the drive a rather long one. Cindy was used to taking the train to and from, so the difference between the places she traveled was never this apparent to her. After driving and chatting for a while, Corey pulled up to Tor's house. Cindy approached the door first, but Corey and Audra stood close behind. It took another set of knocks before Tor finally opened the door. Corey and Audra looked at each other the moment he did. Cindy was not kidding when she mentioned the size of Tor rivaled that of the gargoyle. Despite the fact that his hair was shaggy and he looked unkempt, Corey couldn't help but notice that Tor was attractive. The markings that Cindy noticed in their first meeting were starting to hide under a beard growing on his face. He also abandoned the tribal-like clothing he was wearing previously. For something more modern. Hey, Tor, Cindy waved. I brought 2 of my friends to help. I hope that's okay. Yeah, please come in. Tor stood aside and let the girls enter. He left the door open. I'm sorry this place is a mess. It would seem you've started to find your words, Cindy smiled. Feeling better? Much better. Tor walked past them into a living room area. Despite being a small house, everything around them looked very expensive. The interior of the house mimicked that of the outside, with white walls dominating majority of the design. The living room area they entered consisted of just a couch, a TV on a TV stand, and a coffee table. Near the far side of the room was a long counter, and behind it was a large selection of drinks. Can I get you girls anything to drink? We're fine, Corey answered before the other girls could. She removed her wallet from her pocket and showed Tor her ID. My name is Corey, and I'm a detective with the guard. Cindy and I are friends, so she brought me along to help. Can I ask you some questions? I'm afraid I might not be able to answer them all, said Tor. He sat down on the couch and hung his head. Since Cindy ran into me, I've been having trouble piecing things together. What about before then? Corey took a step closer to Tor, but remained cautious. Do you remember anything before Cindy bumped into you? It was like I was in a coma or missing or floating in a black space. Then all of a sudden, I came to. Corey crossed her arms and rubbed her chin. When you came to, you were standing in front of Seva, correct? That's right. Tor began to rub his hands together. Overall, he was very fidgety. Sorry, the entire situation has me a bit anxious. Understandable, said Corey. Any information you can remember would really help us figure out what's going on. Or we could just take him back to Seva, added Audra. Her words drew the attention of the room. I know it's a long shot, but maybe being near there will stir some memories. It's not a bad idea, said Corey. Are you up for it? Tor stood up. If you think it will help, I'm willing to try. What about your job? Did you find anything out? Asked Cindy. She found it strange that his home was so nice and so well kept despite Tor's current appearance. I couldn't find any information or paperwork, said Tor. What about a phone? Cindy removed hers from her pocket to show Tor what it looked like, just in case he didn't know. Tor revealed a phone that was in his own pocket. I found one. It took me a while to figure out how to use it, but when I did, it didn't have any information on it. Can I see? Corey was closest to Tor now, so she offered. Tor handed it to her. No numbers, no text, no apps. Either you weren't much into technology before whatever happened in Seva happened, or someone else wiped this clean. Why would someone do that? Asked Audra. To keep him quiet? To keep whatever happened in Seva quiet? I don't think we're going to get many answers here. Corey flashed her keys to them. Let's go. Tor barely fit in the back of Corey's car. He sat next to Cindy, and Audra joined Corey up front. The girls talked among themselves about the area around Seva that they were currently in. Not only was Tori's house nice and expensive looking, but the entire neighborhood was rather high class, even though it was next to a city left in ruins. Compared to when Tori and Cindy walked to Tori's house from Seva, it wasn't a far ride by car. Rush hour was over, so there weren't many people around. The train wasn't in the station, so there weren't people commuting either. Corey, Audra, Cindy, and Tor walked up to the fence outside Seva. Tor was almost standing in the same exact spot Cindy ran into him. He looked up to the top of the fence, which was taller than he was. Then he peered off into the distance. "What's inside?" he asked. They call it the lost city of Seva because everything inside is in ruins. Some people say the air is too toxic to breathe in there, and that's why no one has done anything to fix it. Corey walked up to the yellow tape that surrounded Seva. The guard has had this place roped off for a long time, too. "I think I see people in there," Audra pointed. Corey looked where Audra was looking. "That's impossible. The guard would arrest them." "Those look like people to me," Cindy confirmed. "Stay back." Corey looked around, then grabbed the fence, ready to climb it. Tor grabbed the same part of the fence and separated it in a way that he could pull it open. Corey moved under Tori's arm and slipped through the opening in the fence. She turned around to tell Audra and Cindy not to come, but Audra was right behind her. "You girls should stay out here." We're curious too," Cindy said as she peeked over Audra's shoulder. Tor entered behind them and let the fence close. "We want to come." "Fine, but stay close to Tor and me." Audra and Cindy nodded. "Let's go."